Some additional safety considerations we can take the opportunity to urge with you. First of all, a pedestrian beacon in front of St. Simon's Elementary School between 5th and 6th, wherever, would be really important for the safety of the kids, because we know a lot of parents park across the street, go pick up their children, and then return to the other side. We also know that that parking lot at the elementary school gets used on the weekends for people going to the beach, and crossing that area, it really needs it. I think the effort to put the beacon at Massengale Park was huge. It's that same kind of situation that we think needs to be addressed. Another one is make sure appropriate crosswalks are installed at all street crossings that have pathways. My pet peeve right now, if you've been to Arnold and Ocean, 2 of the 4 crossings do not have any kind of markings at this point, and that's a place I know that's heavily trafficked by people walking across that street. Redfern Village is another one where you have a couple of sidewalks, or sidewalks on either side of the entrance, and no crosswalk in place. Finally, and I believe this is coming, I'm hearing good things, but development of comprehensive master trail plan for the entire Glenn County area would help us identify places that need improvement and places where we can build new trails that will make it safer and better for people as they move biking, walking, rolling, running around Glenn County. And then finally, thank you for listening today and again, taking your time out of your busy schedules. I did add an appendix to this. It's a listing of my efforts to try to quantify what sidewalks are what width. And so you can see there's a good deal of 8-foot connections, but there is also some areas that are not connected. Thank you.
Mr. Pounds, thank you. I appreciate the fact that you not only brought some concerns, but you also brought possible solutions with you. That's always appreciated. I share a lot of your concerns here, and we're talking about this very thing of developing, just taking our whole sidewalk and bike path and examining it from one end to the other too. I've received emails on different signage, conflicting signage, illegal signage, and I agree with you. This is something that we should and will take up. Commissioners, are there any comments, questions, anything?
I've got a couple. Okay. On the crosswalks, it's my understanding state law is the bicyclist is supposed to walk. Sidewalks. The only sidewalks on St. Simon's are in the village. That everything else is called a trail. And he gave Ben Slade a lot of credit for hard work on that. So, you know, really and truly, I guess they are available to be ridden on by a bike.
They're being used in that fashion.
Yeah.
It's just a question.
Well,
I don't believe it's in the ordinance. If it is, we can't find it.
yeah. Well, I agree too. We don't need kids riding bikes on Ocean Boulevard or Frederica Road or anywhere. So the things you brought up are going to be helpful. But it's my understanding too, on a multi-use path, 5 foot is the minimum width it can be, and 8 foot is the suggested.
Generally,
Okay.
my
I think if they're all considered trail except the village, that kind of opens it up. But I'm sure we'll check and make sure.
Mr. Chairman, I defer with the county attorney. When I did serve the last time, I thought we did some things because there are state laws that override the use of sidewalks and bike paths. I asked him to look back up because I couldn't remember for sure, but I know we did pass some stuff. And be glad to continue to work with your organization to do what we can. As you know, I want to say this, county is not the end of all things. It takes partnership with citizen community groups, and you can play, your group can play a pivotal role actively with Public Works that would help them and help y'all. So let's follow up with some meetings with the new Public Works Director and see where those partnerships that y'all could step up and lead, because we're loaded. But Mr. Attorney, I asked you to check in and see what the record was from the past or where we stood.
Certainly. And this subject comes up every couple of years as concerns are brought up. And I'll start maybe with the lowest of the low-hanging fruit. We already have an ordinance that prohibits motorized vehicles on paths on St. Simon. So that's already in place, and so that is more of a enforcement issue, and probably a little bit difficult because what is a bike, what's motorized, but that's already in place, and so we can already should be taking care of those things.
But Mr. Mumford, to Mr. Pound's point, class 1, class 2s, we have a lot of elderly that want to ride, and they certainly don't need to be on Frederica Road.
Right.
So
Right.
I think we've got to revamp our entire system and look at the ordinances that are in place, plus the ones that we need to put in place
Sure.
to drive this forward, to make it safer for everyone over there.
Sure.
And
And commissioners, we can certainly look at that and make those distinctions as to what y'all think is the best policy on that. So that is, it should be fairly easy to make those changes once we identify what those should be. As to the width of the paths and 10 feet, 5 feet, state law is in this area is a little bit of a web of complexity, right? And in one regard, state does say minimum width of this and standards should be followed. On the other hand, if it's simply just defining where a bike is allowed and not, that is left to the discretion, generally left to the discretion of the governing authority. So our ordinance doesn't define or distinguish between a bike path, a walking path, or a multi-use path. And generally where we left off a couple of years ago was because we don't define where each one of those is, unless the board wants to prohibit bicycles on these paths, they are allowed on St. Simon's, regardless of the width of the path, because that gets into another level of law as to where you start defining those things. If the board wants to make that more clear, to ease the concerns and obviously let law enforcement have that backdrop, we can certainly make that absolutely clear, or refine further where you do or don't want to allow them. So it's a relatively easy fix to avoid any confusion that may be out there. But to be clear, there's nothing that prohibits bikes on the paths on St. Simon's explicitly.
But motorized.
But yeah, motorized,
That
yes.
was gonna be my next
That's
one.
correct. Motorized are currently prohibited, and if y'all want to make distinctions between class 1, 2, and 3, we can do that as well.
all right, certainly something we're going to take up soon.
I have a quick question. We don't have anything like this in my district, but
But it's coming.
well, that's a follow-up question. But sir, your organization, your board, do y'all offer financial assistance to these?
We're really not in a position. We do some things, like we had an event this morning down around St. Mary's where we handed out bike helmets. We are not in a position to do much more than that. We're
Do you have
relying
plans to
on-
raise money or to try to?
We're trying just for us to have to keep, our door open, for lack of a better term, is a struggle for us.
I would think
And,
that would go a long way
Yeah.
in having your wishes met.
Yeah.
If y'all could step up, your board or your organization could step up and help with these, maintenance, and you talk about, grass and things like that getting over it into these sidewalks and 2-inch lips that could be ground down, but yeah, I could see where we could use help in that area.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you again.
And Commissioner, I'm happy to speak with the group offline if that helps and go over those things as well.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, before we move forward, can I just make sure IT is good? So we had some streaming issues, I think. I think we're streaming now. We're hearing that feedback in the room. I think it's the mix between the microphone for the room as opposed to the microphone for the stream. Where are we, Quincy, now?
Yeah.
So I think what the problem is, if they raise the microphone level for the people in the room, then you start hearing more of the feedback.
Yeah.
The microphones that we have
We
are
didn't need
for
to get it
streaming.
fixed.
I know they were testing this before the meeting started today, and it was sounding good. This is horrible, and I know it's miserable for you in the room, and I'm sure it is people trying to stream. So if we can't get this straight, I would suggest our next meeting be at the historic courthouse until we can.
I agree.
Item number 2 today is to receive a presentation from the St. Simon's Boating and Fishing Club. Mr. Clement Cullins is here with us today. If you would come forward, sir, and we'll see if we can hear what it is you have to say today.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I think I can talk pretty loud.
Yeah, and mic
Is that-
close.
Is that
Yeah.
good?
Better?
Better? Worse? All right. I'll try to remember to get close to it. How we doing?
Good. Thank you for being here.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. Commissioners, I presented you guys late last Friday. I apologize. It was after 5 o'clock with our updated annual presentation. Basically the same form and substance for the operational update as you guys get every year from us. This year our revenue was down a bit. We were just north of break even. We had about $4,000 in change in retained earnings. That was a decrease against fiscal year 2022-23 of about $30,000. Interestingly, that $30,000 delta was made up almost equally split between $15,000 increase in expenses and $15,000 decrease in revenue. So I think that it's no shock to anyone that the economy's not doing that great, and boating kind of goes by the wayside as one of the first things. So the decrease in revenue was not unexpected, and the increase in expenses with the things like the underground storage tank for the fuel and the concrete repairs, things that we've done down there, that wasn't unexpected either. So net, we're on a pretty good trajectory. As far as our other large updates, as the Commission's aware, we've made over $250,000 in structural and maintenance expenditures over the past 5 years. The past year was, again, a little bit heavy on that. I think we were up to about $70,000 on repairs and maintenance last year. It's anywhere between $15,000 and that $70,000 over the past 5 years. So we try to keep a little nest egg to be able to cover those things, and to date we've been able to do so. A couple of positive notes. We instituted a few years ago. I think the Commission was a little concerned about the appearance of the Marina. We had let some clutter build up, and we instituted a Marina work day, really a work weekend, where we do light maintenance, repairs, just a volunteer work day. We did that again for the 4th year in a row this year. It was great. We got to knock out some painting, did pressure washing, fixed a bunch of little odds and ends that we otherwise would have had to pay people to come do, and just a great event for the membership. And we had our 3rd annual, goodness, is it only the third annual Triple Tail tournament this year? That's been a great success, not only from well, it's not a great success from a financial standpoint. We usually net about $4,000 or $5,000 out of it, but it's a great outreach opportunity, gets the community down there We do food and a captain's meeting and a party afterwards, and it's a great experience for everybody. This year we had a record attendance, and I believe I noted in my report that there was the tournament was fished in by largely non-members of the boating and fishing club. So we had about 30 members that fished in the tournament, another 50 or so that were non-member but local to Glenn County, and then the remainder were folks that came in from out of town. So great event. We've been doing that for a few years now, and it does supplement the coffers a little bit, but really it's just an excuse to get everybody together and have a good time. I burned through that in record pace because I know what y'all really want to talk about tonight, this afternoon. How are we going to make more money at the Marina? We got a plan. Mr. Chairman, I've presented for the county's approval our proposed updated rates. I would say that we do not have formal board approval on these yet. We're meeting next week to get that approval. Our chairman, Mr. Joe Applegate, has absconded to Homosassa to go scalloping, so we weren't able to have a meeting without him. So all of these are not written in stone, and pursuant to the lease, we are required to tender these proposed rate increases to the county, and if the county attorney were so inclined to allow the commission to approve this in a not-to-exceed style fashion, we would greatly appreciate it. But gentlemen, the breakdown of the fees is, and keeping in mind that it is a public marina, we want the public to be there. We insist that the public have as good or better access than the membership. And as I pointed out at the last meeting that I talked to you guys at, being a member of the St. Simon's Boating and Fishing Club gets you a discount on your launching and your overnight, and it gets you access to be able to be on the list for wet or dry storage. And we do that, one, as a way to balance out our cash flow, that those $100 checks that we've been getting from folks for the past few years help us manage our finances. But on the storage side, it's not a barrier for anybody to keep anybody out. It is simply a method for us to create a list so that people can get onto that list, so that we don't have absentee owners from all over the place that put in their name on a list from, say, Miami and keep a boat up here and never use it. That would kill the marina. It's not the intended purpose of the public marina. We want people down there using it. It's what gives us cash flow, helps us operate. So, from the get-go, our mandate has been, if we need to increase revenue, which we clearly do, the major burden should fall to the membership, because those are the folks down there using it more than anybody else. So with that, we've proposed some modest increases on the launches, about 20% across the board, 25% for members and about 18% for non-members, the public. Overnight dockage going up marginally on that. That is a good revenue stream for us already, and we're kind of at the top of the watermark for what we believe we can charge with the amenities that we have. So going from $20 to $22, $10 to $12 for the members. And then the big stuff kicks in. The dry rack storage that we have, the barn, we've got space for 35 small boats. A small boat is got to be 24 feet or under total length, including the motor. So generally a 22-foot boat plus the motor. We're going to double that, and then we've got 12 large slips that can fit up to about a 27, 28-foot boat. We're doubling that as well. So going to $300 per boat per month on the small, $400 per boat per month on the large. And then about a 25% increase on the wet slips, notably on the wet storage. Apparently I got a lot of time on my hands. I went through and looked at all of the public marinas that I could find on the eastern seaboard, and for monthly dockage at a public marina like Fort Pierce Marina or the City Marina down in Fernandina, there's 10 or 12 that I looked at. $12.50 a month is on the low end, but right in there with what the market is for dockage at a public marina. And then our final update would be that's relevant to the actual numbers charged here. We're gonna double our membership rate from $100 to $200. That we were at, I think, $85 for many years, and we've been at $100 for many years. And so, you know, it's something that, one, we have a bit of a captive audience with the members. If you're in the barn or have a wet slip, or if you put in a lot, you know, you get the benefit of the discount and it pays for itself. So doubling that is something that we've run by our membership. Everybody agrees, everybody wants to support and wants to do whatever it takes to get that place in not only working order but great shape. The sum total of all this, gentlemen, is with some pretty conservative assumptions, like us still putting $50,000 to $75,000 a year in maintenance and repairs, you know, outside of any large capital repairs, increasing salary, negotiating with our manager, taking back the way that our manager's currently paid is he gets a portion of the dockage and he gets some of the gas and he gets a little salary, and so we're looking at taking all of that in-house and then just creating more certainty for ourselves. And the sum total is, very conservatively, we should add another net $65,000 to $70,000 a year to the marina's income. Retained earnings, I believe, is what we have to call it in the nonprofit world. So that's kind of what we're looking at, gentlemen. It's a pretty thorough plan. It's going to involve a lot of work. As the commission knows, the board of directors has been a pretty passive board. We trust our marina manager. We like our marina manager. For the next 12 to 24 months, as we get these new rates, the new programming, kind of taking back of the services and negotiating with the county with what 2025 and beyond looks like, we're all hands on deck. We're looking at point of sale systems. We're looking at all the different options that we have for reasonable revenue increases, and we're happy to be making this presentation today.
Mr. Clemens, thank you. I know that we have had small groups, and this mic sounds dead. Are y'all able to hear me okay? Okay, all right, great. You know, we've had small group meetings with you. You've done an awful lot already in answering a lot of the questions that we had coming forward. I didn't see in here anywhere fuel price adjustment. Did I miss that?
So
I read it Friday night when you sent it. So
again, I apologize for the.
no, I was on vacation enjoying some leisure
Oh,
time.
now I feel even worse.
Yeah. So
it is in there. So well, it's not in the presentation. It's in our financials and our pro formas. But yes,
it's part of the 65.
That's correct.
All right.
It's baked into that. That's
all
correct.
right. Gentlemen, any questions? I know that your plan is to give us a longer term plan by the first of the year to move forward, so that we can get back into longer term contracts and working agreements as we go forward, and hopefully county will be able to find funds to help improve the marina as well. So anything else, gentlemen?
How large a site is this? I forget the acreage over there.
Ooh, that's a good question, Commissioner Booker. I believe the entirety of the site is 3.5 acres. Does that sound right, Ms. Smith? and of that, actively utilized by the marina is, probably right at an acre and a half. And then the remainder of that is just sort of, well, some of it's wood space to give a nice buffer for the garden club, and some of it's parking and trailer parking and all kinds of things like that. But actively used paved space with the improvements probably right at an acre and a half.
In the area, have we worked to clean up old boats and stuff that were out there some years ago when
We
these that
have.
I got on here?
We have. So we, and thank you for the question. We worked in 2018 and 19 with the commission. We acknowledged that there weren't so many old boats out there, but trailers that had been there for far too long. And so we instituted a trailer policy. You go down there any weekend and there's gonna be trailers down there. That's just how it is, because people come and, you know, they're coming from out of town, or they're leaving their trailer there while their boat's in the water. So there are trailers there intermittently. Our policy is, I believe, not more than 5 days without written permission. And we stick to that pretty good. I'm sure there's a couple that miss our scrutiny. And that's one place where, yeah, certainly not this year, but just preparing for next year, we may look to actually charge for trailer parking for a limited number of spots. That's a great way for us to get some additional income, but it's also a great way for us to police the trailers that shouldn't be there. So that's probably something that we'll be bringing to the commission either through small group or next year.
So you all are prepared for massive growth, as you, make it known that this is a public facility.
We are prepared for as much growth as we can handle on that site, yes, sir. And we welcome the growth. We, you know, as the economy continues to slow, we anticipate that this year will probably be about like last year, marginal slowing, marginal detraction. But when people want to use their boats, we want to be there for them. And as the McKay River Bridge is set to be removed, I think next year, 2 years, that'll make the St. Simons Marina really the only public access point for all tides on St. Simons. So we'll be instrumental in making sure people can use our natural resources, and that's something that we take pretty seriously.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clement.
I just want to say thank you, and thank you to the commissioners who work. This group hears me say all the time, just like the bike group, public-private partnerships are an important part of a well-functioning government. We can't do it all, so we rely on the relationship of the private organizations and clubs to partner in various ways, and we have those various partnerships, like I said, Altamont Park, Blythe Island, and that's very important, and we appreciate y'all stepping back up to partner in a stronger way to upgrade the facilities and keep it doing good for each other and the public.
Thank you, Commissioner Penday. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And IT, I don't know what you have done, but it is infinitely better. Thank you for it. Item number 3 today is discussion of Glenn County boards and commissions, and our Assistant County Manager, John Gentry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment on the trail plan. Our Public Works Director was on leave, and he wanted to make sure that you knew that we use Georgia Sidewalks as a contractor for all the ups and downs and the cutting of concrete, and they're about 3 months behind schedule, just based on the enormity of jobs they have around the state. So, but we do have work orders in place for a lot of those, the issues that we're seeing on some of those sidewalks. So it doesn't go on deaf ears. It's just one of those where it's not enough people that do that particular work. This particular contractor does an excellent job, and we look forward to getting them here in Glenn County to finish up some safety issues we do have. So So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, earlier this year, you asked staff to review current boards and committees for their effectiveness, move Glenn County forward, and to eliminate any boards or committees that are inactive. Several boards did sunset. For example, the SPLOST 2016 committee, which had a defined period of service, and several are still under review and will require some additional guidance and review. Today, we'll discuss 3 boards and committees that are inactive that staff is recommending to you that you consider eliminating from our ordinances. The first is the Altamaha Regional Park Advisory Committee. This committee was established in 1996 to provide advice, recommendations, and assistance to the Board of Commissioners and County Administrator as appropriate with respect to policies, operations, administration, and finances pertaining to the development of operation of Altamaha Regional Park. Also to promote public use, develop physical facilities, and to maximize operation efficiency and financial condition of the park. Upon establishing the agreement to have a third party operate the park in February of 2003, this committee no longer served a purpose, and subsequently no one was further appointed. The second committee is the Animal Control Advisory Board. The purpose of the Animal Services Advisory Board, as established in 2013 update, was to advise the Board of Commissioners and the County Administrator as appropriate regarding the facilities, rules, and procedures which will protect the public, protect animals, and cultivate owner responsibility for animals. This board had an additional purpose of raising and accepting funds on behalf of the animal services, as well as assisting the publicity, outreach, and volunteer recruitment and retention. I'll note that the last part of that about volunteerism, raising funds, has transitioned to a group called GCAS. It's Grateful Cats, Canines, Allies, and Supporters. They're a group that currently provides support in their registered 501c3 in support of our Animal Services Department. The final board for consideration of elimination is the Tree Board. This was established and had the responsibility to study, investigate, counsel, and develop and update annually and administer a written plan for care, preservation, pruning, planting, replanting, removal, or disposition of trees and shrubs in parks, along streets, and in public areas. So of note, this particular tree board was only responsible and reported on trees that were county trees owned by county parks, as well as in the right-of-way, not on private property. Such plan was presented annually to the Board of Commissioners, and upon acceptance and approval constituted the official comprehensive tree plan for the county. The tree board was to consider, investigate, make findings, report, recommend upon, and administer any special matter or questions coming within the scope of tree planting, maintenance, replacement, protection, or removal in the county property. So when Glenn County had a staff member become arborist certified, the BOC established, and also the BOC established the St. Simons Island Tree Canopy Preservation Ordinance. A need for the board seemed to come into question at some point in time in our past. The BOC chose not to nominate any additional members once that arborist came on board, and also once the tree canopy ordinance was established for St. Simons. This does not eliminate anything related to the tree canopy preservation ordinance. This recommendation is only to eliminate the tree board and replace the board with a certified arborist for the purpose of mentioned previously in county parks and in county right-of-way. So present those 3 recommendations to you for consideration of elimination, pending your questions and your guidance at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Gentry. Gentlemen, any discussion on these 3 boards and purpose for eliminating?
The tree board, that primarily was designated to St. Simon's Island?
No, sir, that was countywide, so that was in county parks and county right-of-way.
And when you say, what would it be replaced with, an arbitrage?
An arborist, yes, sir, a
Arborist.
certified arborist, the staff has, or either a contracted certified arborist at all times.
And do we have one of those on staff?
We did up until a week ago, and he took another job. However, we're in the process of actually contracting back with him because we have an immediate need for the purpose of reviewing tree plans that come in as part of our tree ordinance process, primarily on the island. So that arborist also was a primary reviewer for our planning staff.
Does he primarily work on the public works?
Currently, he was working under our planning department, but we also are looking at having our public works arborist. So we've got a new hire within our right-of-way coordinator, and that individual will get our arborist certified as well.
And so when trees need to come down, he's the guy that does that?
Yes, sir. So what we'll do, we usually have our arborist, we'll look at the tree first, determine whether it's an ill tree, a dead tree, or a declining tree. At that point in time, make the recommendation to the Public Works Director to have that tree removed out of the right-of-way only or within our parks if we should have one of those.
So he's just the guy that makes determinations. He's not the guy that takes trees down.
Correct, yes, sir. So we have a separate contractor that actually removes the trees.
Mr. Chairman, the Omaha board, did you say 2003, that board no longer, or 13?
2013 is when we went into the first official agreement with a third party to operate the Altamaha Park.
And that committee still, that park board still exists?
Yeah, the park
Just-
board, yeah.
Yes.
But the advisory board, which was, has been very instrumental up there for many a year, my dad served on it, and, you know, the other two I'm fine with, but I would like to see, you know, us not like close it off, you know, in the future if we do need to have an advisory board somewhere, you know, not, because, you know, I was on the Blythe Island Advisory Board, and they're very instrumental in, you know, I think citizens that we place on those boards to serve at our, when we appoint them, such as Selden Park, Blythe Island Advisory Board, there is a place for them in this government. So, you know, I would like to, you know, think about this some more, the Special Omaha Board. I know we got the board up there that we have now and seem to be doing a fantastic job, but, you know, it never hurts to have oversight in some of these places, but, you know, the tree board and the other board, I'm, you know, good with that, but the Omaha Board, I just, you know, maybe not right now, but if citizens did come forward, a group that think they can help, advise and be our eyes and ears, you know, we don't need to turn our backs on that, but, you know, moving forward, right now, we don't have anybody that can serve on them, but that doesn't mean in a couple of years that we don't have some folks that, care about the community and are willing to serve, to, you know, advise us on different things that, may be out there, networking, so to speak. So that's only my input on it, but I appreciate it, Mr. Gentry.
Would you think that, you know, my feeling,
Mhm.
was that we had redundancy out there, and we needed one board to speak, and I thought we had that, was my understanding. And would it not be possible if the need arose to reinstitute an advisory board, rather than have one sitting?
Have
on-
double, yeah, I can agree with you more, but just, if it ever come to that point where we need
To
the advisory
reinstitute
board to
it, yeah.
reinstitute it, we'd have that option.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. So the one thing that that's one of those that are still in review. You had also asked for us to look at our park advisory boards. So we're just not prepared at this point in time to bring back to you a recommendation, but we're continuing to review that based on your guidance at this point in time. So, but at this point in time, best of my understanding, no one is appointed to the Altamaha Park Board. However, the current third-party operation does, partner has an advisory committee that actually, supports an advisory to the third-party
Okay.
vendor, so.
And reports to us with an annual.
Yes, sir, and they
Oh.
actually send a report. We recently received, I believe it was, from them. their
And if
annual
that's
report.
working, that's perfect, you know, they have the advisory board to the committee.
And does that board, raise funds?
I don't think that particular board that is a part of the third-party vendor does, but I am not the expert in the Altamaha Park.
I remember when that was part of District One, I thought that they raised money and bought the playground equipment out there.
They did.
Is
They put the
was
playground.
that the board you're referring to?
Yep, that was that board.
Yeah, I'm not clear about this. Maybe I missed some emails or something. I didn't realize there was two boards out there. And now that there's a third party, when did we set up the third party?
In
I missed that.
2013, there was a third-party vendor that operates similar to what we just heard a presentation on the St. Simons Island Marina. So there's a third-party vendor that is the operational entity for the Altamaha Regional Park.
Is that the one that runs the store and all that stuff out there?
In the campground, yes,
The
sir.
campground.
Okay, I never understood that clearly. I understood the task that they were doing,
Yes, sir.
but I thought the advisory board was doing all of that. And they had, created they were paying a manager or somebody out of the funds that were being raised. So I never understood that there was two boards. Even though I know I just was coming on in 2013, that was my first year. And now you're saying there's a committee that advises them. Who chooses that committee?
So that is just the committee that, I guess that third-party advisory group has, I guess, is a community committee. Aaron, you may be able to add to that.
Right, I can, so it's Omaha Park of Glenn, which is a nonprofit, similar to what the Boating Fishing Club is, and they operate that park on behalf of the county. So you lease it to them, and then the lease goes back, the most current lease, I think, is 2013, but they've been managing that park for a long time. Right, and then, so that's just the latest iteration of that lease. And then the county, Glenn County Board of Commissioners have the advisory board, which was awesome, Omaha Park Advisory Board, which I think the last time there was a member appointed that, probably sometime 2013 to 12.
No, I had somebody appointed since I was on the board. I came on, and tried to get all my appointments on there. And see, I never understood there were two boards. And maybe that's why people didn't stay, because they didn't feel that they were needed. In all my efforts in trying to recruit somebody to work out to serve on that board. And, so there's an entity like the Yacht Club, group that is operating that.
Correct.
Okay, now I've been on here, this is my 12th year. I didn't understand it. And I thought that something totally different about that area. I thought it was like Blythe Island. Now, unless you all are telling me Blythe Island is different, it has two boards too. Okay, and so that's how I was operating about with the people out there, and some complaints as well, but I didn't realize that. So now I don't know if that makes any difference, other than I wasn't understanding the information that was coming across my email about that. And so now I agree with Commissioner Clark. I like to look at this a little bit more, because, I mean, we spent a lot of time with the Yacht Club and that relationship going back to when Commissioner Murphy was on here and dealing with those things. And I wanna look at this a little bit, for me, not, I mean, we go ahead and vote to dismiss it, that's fine. But I'll still be looking at this committee, because I don't necessarily, I'm not comfortable with, no per se community representation, even on the yacht club, that's another discussion. But with this, if this group has been operating all this time out there, and with very little, community input, I'm sure these people live here, so I'm not saying that they're not a part of the community, but then again, I don't know that. But anyway, those are my concerns, I don't wanna hold up the meeting.
Yes, sir. Your guidance to the staff was to look at the boards that were inactive, and this is one of those inactive boards. So that is the reason why we're presenting this to you at this point in time. for your
Well,
consideration.
to me, it seems inactive because what is his role if you have a third party doing everything?
That's
Yep.
right. So
So-
the county's advisory board that you appointed is effectively overseeing this nonprofit that's created to operate the park that you lease it to. So that was their function, is to oversee this other entity. So there's not two boards, although that nonprofit has a board of directors. But there's not like two boards per se. It's that they have this company that manages it on your behalf with agreement. And then your advisory board, was the one that was overseeing the company do that. So,
I would challenge you, Aaron, there was two boards, you just said it. There's a board of directors for the operational side, and then there was the board that we appointed. So there was two boards, and I don't know how our advisory board felt if they really didn't have any authority with, what was going on out there. I'm pretty sure they had some kind of working relationship, but.
and I think that's probably why it became defunct, because their
Right.
oversight ability or the kind of relationship between that nonprofit and then the advisory board created, there was a lot for them to do.
The board for the third party was like, well, we have the authority, you all are really just, I don't know.
Were they the same members?
No, sir. So
They-
the advisory board is appointed by the board of commissioners, and then the board of directors of the nonprofit is appointed by themselves. So they're independent.
But were they same people?
No, sir. Different people.
I think you would have had more synergy if they were the same people, but it still would have kind of taken, I don't know, it seemed like we circumvented our own authority there. But anyway.
If the board wants to, these are easy to reconstitute. So if, right now it hasn't been in existence for 5, 6, 8 years. Well, I'd say probably closer to 10. But if you want to reconstitute it at any point, you can, by vote of board of commissioners, you can reconstitute this board or any of these boards that you feel like are needed in the future.
And one thing about that is the group out there, they do a fantastic job. It doesn't cost taxpayers in Wayne County, as far as I know, one dime to operate out there. They do, and they police their stuff very well.
Yeah, I guess my concern, like with the yacht club, is that people understand it's for the entire public and not just a group, not a private club. When you begin to operate as this third party organization, I operate a private nonprofit, have many for years. And so there's a sense of this is, our operation, even though we interact with the public. And so my concern would be because it's our asset, and we operate on behalf of the community, it's the community's, public's asset that people know about. That, to me, was the biggest issue with the yacht club, and I can't speak for Commissioner Murphy, but I think it bothered him as well. We didn't know that this was open to the public. Everybody didn't know that. A small group knew that, and that's my concern about it.
So Commissioner Booker, just to add to your comment, I'd only been out to Altamaha Park one time previously. So my wife and I went undercover this weekend, and we took our boat and put in at the park and rode up in the river. No charge to anyone to launch their boat, so free access, free parking. So just anything you were to buy from the store, of course, would be a purchase of something. So the experience was great from our part, and even caught a fish or two. So it was a good report. So, Mr. Chairman, I present to you as this is some for consideration and any guidance for staff that I can take back at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gentry. Are we of a consensus that the animal control and the tree board at least could come to a commission vote on Thursday night, Mr. Mumford, or?
You'd like, again?
And is there, do y'all want to pull the Automobile Hall and hold it for later?
I would.
I would like for us to circle back to this thing sooner rather than later, though.
I would, say that being able to entertain the animal control I would think it's a big win for this community. Because, when I came on, there was a lot of, concern, I'll put it that way.
There was a bomb.
Yeah, you know, and so, right, and for us to get to this point, and this commission to kind of, really finish what the other commissions started with the new animal control part, I think is a great achievement. And I say that because I was in many, many meetings and they were not always calm. I'm sorry,
Thank you,
Chairman.
Commissioner.
Let's move.
Anything else? Item number 4 is to receive a presentation from our district attorney. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you and speak today about budgeting in the District Attorney's Office. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how we are set up and how we're organized initially so you can understand the process. The Judicial Circuit is a 5-county judicial circuit. Within that circuit, there's 5 separate offices. And within those offices, you have various personnel that work to prosecute felony cases, juvenile court cases, and handle other matters that are part of our duties. The total geographic area of the circuit is about the size of the state of Delaware, so that's what we are dealing with in the DA's office. Current organizational chart as of July, basically you have a chief assistant district attorney who's more of a circuit-wide employee that's located here in Brunswick, and other executive staff members that you see there at the top of the chart. You then have a deputy chief assistant district attorney in charge of each office, who is the managing attorney, if you will, of each of those offices, who supervises the day-to-day operation of those offices. On this chart, I've listed the funding sources of each of these personnel. County does not necessarily mean which county is provided the funds for that particular person, just that it's county funding. And I'll get into that just a little bit, and just a little bit about the various revenue sources that the district attorneys have for our purposes. But in charge of each office is a deputy chief assistant district attorney, who tends to be the most experienced attorney in that office. We try to have those individuals as state-paid individuals because they tend to be the most experienced, and therefore those that have the highest salaries. And then in each office we have support staff. We have a receptionist, legal assistants, victim advocate, investigator. And so that's basically the setup of the office. As a force multiplier, we have contracted with 2 attorneys to handle drug court under a contract, and a separate attorney to handle asset forfeiture cases, so that our assistant district attorneys are free to handle those matters that only they can handle in court. So they're freed up for that. With regard to that, when I came into office back in January of 2021, the budget had already been established for fiscal year 21. We were already 6 months into it. The budgets of the other counties had already been set at that particular time. The DA's office had not asked for a budget increase for at least 10 years. During that time, crime populations had increased, obviously, crime had increased, yet the resources that the district attorney's office had to address those issues had not increased. That's because funding had not been asked for. Increased funding had not been requested. There are 4 assistant DAs to cover the entire judicial circuit. So in that particular time, once the next fiscal year came around, fiscal year '22, we used what funds we already had in the budget during that 6 months to hire additional personnel. We asked for budget increases during the next fiscal year. This board graciously gave us budget increases as we have asked for them. Other counties did as well. We obtained additional county funding in the circuit, not just from Glenn County, but most of the other counties, 4 of the 5. We obtained additional grant funding as well to try to staff the office so that we could prosecute criminals, have them held responsible, and keep our communities as safe as possible in that regard. Currently, we have 16 assistant district attorneys. Now, this isn't the number that we need to do the job as it needs to be done. A study by the American Prosecutors Research Institute back in 1973 found that a prosecutor should handle no more than 150 felonies or 400 misdemeanor cases per year. Now, I'm not going to come before this board and ask for you to give me 17 county paid ADAs. Number one, I don't think that would be a reasonable request. Number two, I wouldn't have the place to put them. And besides, county funding is not the only source of revenue for the DA's budget and for what we try to accomplish as part of our mission. But looking at this standard of how many assistant DAs are recommended to handle a particular caseload, currently there's 6,640 cases that are open, pending in the Brunswick circuit. That would require 42 ADAs. I have 16. We do the best we can, and we do a pretty good job of it with the resources that we have. And I appreciate the resources that have been given to the office by this board and others. In Glenn County, with the 6 assistant DA positions that I have, one of which is currently vacant, that would be an average caseload of 420 cases, yes, I believe that's 420 cases per ADA. If you divide 24 by 6, I believe that's what you'll come up with. Now, even though we are understaffed according to what the American Prosecutors Research Institute recommends that we should have to do the job the way it needs to be done, we still accomplished quite a bit for this county and the other counties in the circuit over the last 3 calendar years. In the circuit over the last 3 calendar years, we filed indictments, about 4,000 indictments or accusations, over 1,200 of those in Glenn County. We've provided services to more than almost 14,000 victims with our victim assistance program. And those services include not just notifying the victims of what court proceedings are that are coming up, but also referring them for services at other agencies, helping them fill out a victim's compensation application for the Victims' Compensation Board, and just basically, and sitting with them during court proceedings as well. And they also sit with the victims when we interview them or prior to trial or talk with them about their cases as well. But about 14,000 victims have been provided services by the District Attorney's Office in just 3 years. In Glenn County alone, about 6,000 of those are Glenn County by itself. And about 3,600 were victims of violent crimes here in Glenn County by itself. So that's what we've done with the staff that we had. Now, I've spoken at certain other events before, and I've told people that we are fully staffed. And what I meant when I said that is we were as fully staffed as we could be according to the budget that we had. And I was in error in saying that we were fully staffed, because we're not, and reasonably with regard to the available money that we have, we probably never will be. Back in 1988, when I was an assistant district attorney here in Glenn County, I remember manually counting my cases, because we didn't have a computer database back then that the files were entered in, and I had about 275 cases. So that gives you some point of comparison with regard to where we were then and where we are now. We've also prosecuted criminals. We prosecuted felons, and with regard to that, we, during the 3 years, about 3,500 separate individuals have been convicted of felony crimes in this circuit at a 99% conviction rate. About 1,100 of those, roughly, between 1,100 and 1,200, are here in Glenn County at a 98.8% conviction rate. So those are the things that we've been doing with your budget. So those are just looking at the felony cases. We also handle cases in juvenile court. We sit on the multiple disciplinary task force. We do child fatality reviews and are required to report back to the State Department of Health and Human Services with regard to child fatalities and whether or not those were preventable by sitting with a committee involving the coroner and other individuals in all of the counties. And just recently, last month, the prosecutors here in Glenn County at a trial convicted a defendant of child molestation and cruelty to children. The individual got 20 years to serve and had a conviction of the murder case that happened over there at behind Ziggy Mahoney's or Nazaro's in that area. The person was sentenced to life imprisonment. So that's what we have with regard to the district attorney's office, the staff we have on hand, how we got to be there with the amount of staff in terms of that. We've got basically 3 revenue sources for our budgeting that we can count on for budgeting purposes. The state of Georgia provides salary and benefits for a limited number of state-paid employees. They provide us funding for 9 assistant DAs. And then the other staff that you see there. But just looking at DAs, assistant DAs alone, they fund us for 9. And a lot of that is based upon a ratio of 1 assistant DA for each superior court judge. We get an assistant DA position for the chief assistant DA, 1 for drug court, and 1 also for juvenile court. And so that gets us to that level, and then 1 for drug cases as well. I believe that gets us to the 9. But we also have grant funding that we use to hire on prosecuting attorneys to try to have our staff as full as possible to do the job that we're expected to do as best we can. Currently, we've got ARPA funding that'll end at the end of this year, for which there were 3 assistant DA positions. 1 of those is currently vacant. The individual left and took a job in another circuit here recently, earlier this month. Then we have county funding. County funding is the only funding we have to pay for any of our office expenses. And then they also pay salary and benefits for county paid employees, which are employees that are not paid by the state of Georgia or by a grant. And so 6 ADAs with regard to that. And at some point, there was as many as 18 full-time assistant DAs that we had that were trying to prosecute cases in this county and the other counties in this circuit to keep those communities as safe as possible and hold the criminals responsible for what they have done. And in trying to budget for the office and provide for the personnel that we need to do the job that we're expected to do, that the public wants us to do, we are posed with some unique challenges. We are operating under 3 different budget cycles or fiscal years. 3 of the counties, including Glenn County and the state of Georgia, have a certain fiscal year. Wayne County's fiscal year is a calendar year, and Appling County is the federal fiscal year. So when we're budgeting and trying to anticipate who what we have enough money to do or what have you, this does complicate the situation in terms of dealing with 3 different budget cycles or fiscal years. There's generally one time during the year that I know exactly how much money I'm gonna have before the next budget comes up. It's about when I get Wayne County's budget in on January 1, and then I will know at that point how much money I have to allocate to other purposes, if you will, besides personnel, but as well as personnel. So in doing this, in my office, we have certain staff. We had an accountant or a payroll clerk that basically cuts the checks. I have an office manager that basically oversees the budget, working in tandem to one another with regard to that. And when we're looking at budget requests coming before you or other boards of commissioners, basically at that point in time, and once we get the budget in, here's what happens with regard to payroll. So with regard to county funds that are going to pay salary and benefits of employees, basically we get that amount from each county. They will do a monthly disbursement to the DA's office based upon the total amount budgeted for that fiscal year. So basically they take the total amount of that budget, they divide it by 12, and essentially that's the amount they disperse to us each month. Under the current operation that we have, Glenn County Finance operates as a payroll agent, in that as part of Glenn County, as well as the other counties, will disperse money to our office according to that which is budgeted. Glenn County Finance operates as a payroll agent, in that they issue paychecks to the county paid employees. After they do that, then they invoice the district attorney's office, and we reimburse the county, back to Glenn County, the amount of their payroll disbursement. Any unspent funds that are in the DA's budget at any point in time can be used to add employee positions or for any other purpose. And what I mean by that, the district attorney's office is not set up like you would think, like your county departments would be. So for example, if you've got a county department, you've got certain specified positions for that particular department. We don't have that as the way we are set up. So if, for example, I had a employee that was making, let's just say $140,000 a year salary plus benefits, and that employee left the DA's office, I could potentially hire 2 employees in place of the one at a lower salary and benefits. So I'm not limited to only hiring one person into an open position at whatever amount is allotted for that. So in building the DA's office and trying to bring as many resources and personnel to bear to prosecute crime in this county and the other counties in the circuit, that's what we ended up doing quite often. Initially, we were able to create other positions than that which had previously existed by hiring people in at lower salaries. And so that's where we started building the office, adding personnel, if you will, to the office to get the job done. Problem happened this last fiscal year. We went over budget with regard to the payroll. And I want to talk to you about that a little bit in terms of how that happened. Before I get to that, I want to talk to you a little bit more about hiring for the DA's offices. We have the same problems hiring and retaining ADAs as other law enforcement agencies have. The stress, the workload, the amount of compensation. As I mentioned before, we don't have a limit with regard to the number of type or number of positions. The budget is the limit, if you will. Salaries for ADAs is based upon the level of experience according to the state pay scale. How long have they been a prosecutor? How long have they been a lawyer? What is their experience level? And to deal with this overwhelming caseload that we have, we need to hire the most experienced prosecutors possible. And when budgeting, we have no way of knowing what positions may become available or the experience level that any applicants may have. So those are some unique situations that we have, different than what a county department would potentially have, where you've got a certain position and you have a certain salary for that. Well, if I've got an open ADA position and the person that left that position was at a certain amount, and I don't have that amount to hire, then I just can't hire that person, right? So, but here's what happened with regard to,
I don't understand what you just said.
yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm mentioning it because I don't want to forget.
Yes, sir.
You saying that somebody leaves a position at $110,000, then what happens? Why
Well-
you can't hire somebody else into that position at 110?
Well, if it's an ADA, I potentially could hire somebody with less experience if that's the person that applied for it. But if the person that applied for it on the state pay scale, that their pay is ranked higher than that, we use the state pay scale to hire our county paid people, the same as the state paid people, to have pay equity between the individuals. So if the position open is 110,000 and the person who applies rates out at, let's just say 125,000, I can't hire that person, right?
So the county staff are being hired and managed as state employees, and then we have to pay them as that?
No, sir. No, sir. You are paying assistant district attorneys to prosecute cases in the judicial circuit, you and the other boards of commissioners contributing funds to hire county-paid assistant DAs to prosecute criminal cases within the judicial circuit with county funding. Without county funding, I'd have 9 ADAs. So with regard to that, that's what the funding is coming from. Now, for purposes of pay equity, to hire people in, that we use the state pay scale in terms of what we set those salaries at for people who are applying for positions in our office.
Even if they're a county DA, assistant DA?
Yes, sir. Because they're a circuit DA. They're a district attorney of the Brunswick Judicial Circuit, county funded, if you will. So
That's my point.
yeah.
So the pay equity is a state standard that you go by.
Yes, sir.
And so then we're asked to pay the county assistant DA at that standard.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And so here's
I'm
why.
sorry for interrupting.
That's fine. I appreciate that, Commissioner Booker, and I appreciate the opportunity to explain that. If I'm hiring somebody in from another judicial circuit, another district attorney's office, into this circuit, and they're making a particular salary, and let's say they're state paid, and they're making a particular salary, and I'm gonna hire them into a county paid position, that's probably never gonna happen, because they're gonna be looking for another state paid position. I'm trying to have equity with regard to my DAs, or assistant DAs, with regard to what they're being compensated for based upon their level of experience. So we established that as a criteria for our pay scale that we implement in the district attorney's office with regard to how we pay assistant DAs. We pay them according to the state pay scale as a general rule, and we pay them a bit of a supplement on top of that to be competitive with other DA's offices who are also competing for this limited amount of resources, if you will, attorneys who either have been or want to be prosecutors. So that's how that comes about. So this is an error on this particular slide here. This is for fiscal year 25, the budget that you just passed. With regard to what you just passed, the value of personnel or services that you are receiving in exchange for that would be for 1.3 million. The value of services that you're receiving is personnel at a level of 1.8 million.
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
Okay, so if you look at the amount of budget that you passed, and I'm not even looking at the amount that's involved in that in operating expenses. So fiscal year 25, your budget to the DA's office that you just passed is 1.3 million. looking at the personnel, and once again, that's a typo with regard to the fiscal year we're talking about. For that, you're receiving value and services of 1.8 million. How do I get to that? Well, there's certain circuit level personnel that provide a benefit or service circuit-wide, such as the chief assistant district attorney. Even though that person is state paid and doesn't cost you or any other board of commissioners a nickel, that individual is providing a service or a value, if you will, to the circuit. Assessing that value at the proportional percentage of the population within the circuit, prorated to 41%, which is Glenn County's percentage of the overall population of the 5-county area, and looking at other circuit-wide personnel that benefit Glenn County, who are in Glenn County, by the way, the value received, or return on investment, if you will, is 1.8 million. Looking at it that way, and that's not taking into account anything in any amount that may be taken up by operating expenses or office expenses or telephone charges or anything like that that's in that $1.3 million budget. So I mentioned before that in funding the DA's office and hiring personnel, we went over budget with regard to payroll in fiscal year 24. And here's how it happened. We had VOCA grant funding cut by 60% in October of 2023. And then the staff that I have handling financial matters for me in the office miscalculated the amount of the county funds available to hire assistant DAs. They got it wrong. And because of that, we hired ADAs too quickly for the actual amount of available funds, and looking back at it with hindsight. And in January, we hired 3 employees in January 2024, and I point that out for a particular reason. My staff failed to ever notify me about the problem. I received an email from Glenn Finance in February notifying me that there was a overdue payments with regard to the reimbursements for payroll. Is the first inkling or hint I had that something was going on. My staff assured Finance that it would be made up by the end of April, and then eventually said we'll make it up by the end of June. Well, that didn't happen because there wasn't money to do that. Had I known in December, 60 days, first payment that wasn't made was November. So in this cycle of reimbursing the county for payroll or disbursement of payroll, the first payments stopped in November. No payments were made after that point in time. 60 days after the fact, had I known in December that we didn't have the money to make payroll, we were behind, we had problems, there were things I could have done differently in January of 2024. Number one, I wouldn't have hired these assistant DAs with a county salary. I had 2 state paid positions I could have hired assistant DAs into that were vacant at that time. We used county paid salaries at that time to be more competitive with the other DA's office to be able to hire them. Me thinking that we had enough money to do so, because every time before we hired somebody, I would always ask, do we have the money? And I was always assured either by yes or I'll work it out. I took I'll work it out to mean yes.
Who handles that? Who would be telling you that?
The accountant or payroll clerk, and that
That's
would
on your staff?
On my staff, and then the office manager. So the statements with regard to yes, we have enough money, or I'll work it out, came from the office manager. So there has been action taken with regard to this. Of course, it doesn't solve the issue with regard to the overpayments or the unreimbursed payments. So that's how we got here with regard to over budget. Tamara Munson, the Chief Financial Officer for the county, has graciously worked with my staff and personally with me as well. to come up with a proposal of how to deal with this at this point in time. And I have other sources of revenue. We don't use that for purposes of budgeting purposes or planning in terms of what we will do or won't do for budgeting purposes, but the district attorney's office receives what's called 5% money. Any fine that's collected by any court within the judicial circuit, we receive 5% of that fine that's collected. And then we have asset forfeiture funds that we have as well with regard to when assets are seized from somebody during a criminal investigation or a search warrant, things of that nature, that we can file. We file civil action to forfeit those funds if it was used to facilitate the commission of a crime or were proceeds of a crime, that we could prove that. So those are other sources of revenue that we have to use to address this situation. Before I came here today, we made 2 payments to Glenn County. A payment from operating funds somewhere in the neighborhood of $145,000, and we made a payment, an additional payment of $90,000 from 5% money in asset forfeiture. We've basically took all the money out of that account except that which is required to keep the account over, which I was told was $1. So we're starting with this amount as the amount that we are currently unreimbursed funds that have been dispersed by Glenn County at the top of this. I'm asking this commission to authorize a supplemental budget of 41% of that amount with regard to that amount going over budget. And that's based very simply upon this. Looking at the relative population of the counties in this judicial circuit, Glenn County has 41% of that overall population, according to the U.S. Census Bureau data that for 2022. Based upon that 41% figure, I'm asking this board to authorize a supplemental budget for fiscal year 24 in the amount of 41% of the unreimbursed funds. Those unreimbursed funds were used to benefit this county as well as the other counties in the circuit. Those funds went toward, at least in part, to hire personnel who's actually working in the Glenn County DA's office, one of whom is the prosecutor who got the conviction last month in the child molestation case where the individual was sentenced to 20 years. She is my current deputy chief. She is one of the attorneys that I hired in January with county-funded salaries, not knowing that we had a problem. Other counties in the circuit, I'll be honest with you, I'd ask you, I wish I could ask you in good faith to supplement it all, but I can't do that. I sort of hope I could, but I'm not going to do that. So with regard to that, the other counties in the circuit also benefited from this. There were other employees that were hired that went to the other counties as well. There's an accountant position that is currently vacant that I'm going to leave vacant. I restructured the office so that the duties of that particular employee are going to be performed by other existing employees. So leaving that position vacant for fiscal year 25 through 28 comes up to the amount shown on the chart in terms of monies that I can tell you without any doubt I have available to reimburse the county for that amount of that which you have not been reimbursed for. And then Ms. Munson, my office manager, sat down, we opened our books to her, we opened our bank accounts to her, and she looked back at the last 4 years of 5% money and asset forfeiture funds that came into the office on average. And based upon looking at that, it's estimated that I will be able to make the additional or the last payment that's there to reimburse the county simply from 5% money and asset forfeiture funds. Now, right now in the budget cycle, I still have 2 counties that still have pending budgets coming up for their next fiscal year, if you will. I have Wayne County and I have Appling County. Wayne County, if you'll recall, one is on a calendar year, one is on a federal fiscal year. So currently, the Wayne County's on the federal fiscal year, and we have the request before them. I want to make sure I'm telling you right about the fiscal years. Yes. So Wayne County's on a calendar fiscal year, so we have a current budget request to Glenn County asking for an increase in budget for this next fiscal year. We're asking them to pay for one of the county-funded prosecutors that is actually working in their county. Now that will accomplish two things. That person's already being paid with county funds. I will not hire an additional person with that additional funding if they come up with it. And that's done to try to equalize, if you will, the relative percentages of our budget that each of the counties are paying. Right now, Glenn County's paying about 52% of our budget with 41% of the population. So that's done for those reasons, and so if that budget request is given, then that will allow additional funding that I can use to reimburse Glenn County for that which has been unreimbursed. We're going to make a similar request to Appling County for them to pay for a county-paid prosecutor that's currently working in Appling County. If that request is granted, that will free up additional funds to make further reimbursement to Glenn County. So with that, I can't count on that right now. So that's why I don't have that included in my proposal to you. I don't know what those counties are going to do. I don't know what those counties are going to do. So here's what I can do, or believe I can do right now and agree to do to try to reimburse Glenn County for those funds that you dispersed that basically benefited other counties. So that's what I'm asking you to do and why I'm asking you to do it. Going forward, I want to do whatever we can. I don't want to ever have to stand in front of you again under these circumstances. So I want to do whatever I can to make sure that this never happens again. So we're looking at implementing a position control spreadsheet that only allows the hiring of an employee if there is an open position. But what I would really like to do, and what I've talked to your chief financial officer about and your county manager about, is the possibility of potentially contracting with Glenn County to be our fiscal agent. Not just our payroll agent, but our fiscal agent. We're in paying for payroll or making reimbursements for payrolls, that Glenn County Finance would have the bank accounts and would cut the checks. And we would make the request to Glenn County Finance to cut the checks. And I'm also discussing the possibility of the DA's office being connected to Munis, which is a computer database that basically restricts the ability to spend money in certain categories or certain employment positions if you don't have it. It'll basically tell you, sorry, you don't have enough money, you can't spend it, as I understand it. But those are things that, and I'm open to other suggestions that your chief financial officer, your county manager, or any of you may have, for us to be in a position where this never happens again, and I never have to appear before you in these same circumstances. So that's my request of you, and that's how we got here. That's how I propose to resolve it, and this is how I propose to try to make sure as much as possible that it never happens again.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Commissioners, I know that we've been briefed on this some. The presentation is pretty much in line with things that had been discussed, but I know there's some questions that some of the commissioners would like to ask. So I would open the floor.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mumford, bullet point 2, is that feasible? Discussion. I mean, because I understand this is different than like the sheriff's office or tax commissioner versus the DA's office.
Correct. It is feasible. Some counties in the state of Georgia already do that. So what we would do if the board wanted to entertain that, we would draw up a, a MOU or an agreement between the county commission and the DA that would lay out all the details, specifics of how that would operate, how that would work, to make sure y'all are comfortable with that, make sure they're comfortable with that. But it is doable.
I guess my concern would be, having our finance department take it over without some kind of accountability of the system. I mean, we're winning awards for our financial, team. And if we just take this over and, without some kind of, audit or something, I don't want that to be shining a light on our CFO and her team at all. We've gone through other issues.
Could I ask, Ms. Munson, I know you're not feeling well, but could you address that, and what that would entail for your department? I think it would answer maybe Commissioner Booker's question.
Yes, sir. So, this would be a unique situation where we would become the fiscal agent. We are the fiscal agent for the Brunswick Judicial Circuit. So we manage kind of the circuit-wide expenses, but it's a bit different because each circuit out there pays their own expenses for that. So we only kind of manage those overall circuit-wide expenses. So this is a little bit different, which is why we would definitely need to have an MOU in place to make sure that there's very clear lines of understanding of who's responsible for what, who approves what, where the money comes from, how it's accounted for. Because ultimately, even if we do agree to act as fiscal agent, the DA, those funds still fall under the DA's office. They would not be included in our financial audit. They would not be a part of that process. So we would have to make sure that there's a very clear MOU in place of who's responsible for the funds. We would simply be receiving the money, depositing the money, and issuing the checks as requested by the DA's office.
Would we require an audit for us to do this? Of the DA's office?
I would highly recommend that an audit would be done before, some type of an audit would be done before we would accept the bank accounts and the balances, because we would need to know what checks are out there or have been issued but not cashed yet. If we just take the bank balances, that's not the true picture of the money. So I would recommend an audit. However, an audit costs money, so that would have to be, a consideration of something that could be worked into the DA's budget possibly.
And you're acceptable to that, Mr. DA?
Yes, Commissioner Tostes, and I'd be acceptable with that. I will state that we do an annual audit as it is, and we would make that available to the county, to Ms. Munson with regard to that. We've opened our bank accounts. We opened our ledgers to Ms. Munson. She's been very gracious in helping us try to work through this situation, and I very much appreciate that. And so I have no problem with opening our books, opening our ledgers to make sure that y'all are on good footing should you take this over. I would like to point out that when Stephen Kelly was district attorney, going on now 15 years ago perhaps, that Phyllis McNichol, that's exactly what was going on. Phyllis McNichol at that point in time, as I understand it, was the CFO, and that's exactly how things.
You want a chair?
Phyllis McNichol, who I believe was the county CFO of the county at that particular time, or head of the finance department, was actually had the bank accounts for the DA's office. They were cutting the checks, and this is exactly how it was taking place at that point in time. But I'll be perfectly open and free to open our books, submit to an audit, provide y'all a copy of the audit that we do annually, whatever you wish in that regard. Because I want to make sure that this never happens again as much as we can. And we can talk about whether or not when we're putting in requests for a position or funding of a position, I don't know where Glenn County HR might come in with regard to that. But I'm open to having discussions with Ms. Munson like that. I understand that the sheriff's office uses county HR for some purposes. I'm not really clear on how that works, but I'm open to discussing anything along these lines to do whatever we can to make sure that this never happens again.
Well, my follow-up question to the audit is your audit would be satisfactory to the audit that you would be requesting from the county standpoint?
I'm not aware of what kind of audit that they have. I do know that their grant funds are audited and their 5% funds are audited by the state. So if the other monies, if they're audited by, an outside audit firm, then yes, that should be sufficient.
Okay.
It is done from an outside firm.
And your figure has changed from $1.3 million to basically $362,000.
And the way we
as
got,
far as Glenn County is concerned?
yes, Commissioner Tostes, and the way we got to that point is we made payments on initially what was the unreimbursed amount to reduce that down. And we're going to make additional payments toward that unreimbursed amount. But yes, my request of this board is not to approve a supplemental budget for the full amount that's currently unreimbursed, but only 41% of that. That is proportional to the percentage of population in the judicial circuit that Glenn County has. And I think that would be a fair way of doing that.
And would you be willing to reduce your staff to help along with this overage?
If necessary, I will. I will tell you that any reduction in staff then results in, I'm reluctant to reduce prosecutors. Any reduction in prosecutors, right now I've got 5, actually 6 in Glenn County. An ARPA position is vacant. She left the office on July 9 to go work in the Atlantic Judicial Circuit. One of my prosecutors here in Glenn County is state paid, which is a circuit-wide type benefit that he does not carry a full caseload because he has other duties. So in terms of frontline prosecutors handling a full caseload in Glenn County, right now I've got 5. So divide 2,400 cases, whatever the number is, by 5. That increases their caseload. That then slows down their ability to evaluate those cases, to discern and do triage to determine which cases should even be prosecuted, to then go forward with those prosecutions and address those cases, which many times includes jail cases. So it's going to slow down our ability, quite frankly. The fewer prosecutors I have, the longer it's going to take me to handle cases such as jail cases that are costing this county money for every day that we house people in the jail. So that's $48.95 a day. So the longer it takes me to handle a jail case, because I've got fewer prosecutors in this county, then there's a cost on that end. I don't know how to compute it, quite frankly, but there will be a cost.
So when you get to, I guess one of the questions I was trying, the percentage money you get for Glenn County, then you use that money in other counties in the circuit as well, correct?
And, well, the way the DA's office is funded, we do budgets to all 5 counties to get our expenses.
I know you receive money from all your counties
It all
in the
goes
circuit.
into the
one
same
big pot.
pot, one big pot. It's all commingled. There's no way to really discern whose money is paying who. I allocate resources, personnel to each of the counties as needed on a basis. Right now, I've got 2 ADAs in Appling County. One's state paid, one's county paid. Right now, I've got 3 full-time ADAs in Wayne County. 2 of them are state paid. 1 of them is county paid. Right now, I've got 6 positions, but actually 7 positions, 6 attorneys here, and then I've got 5 down in Camden.
So, in other words, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, I'm just trying to put all this together, because I used to work for the district
Yes, sir.
attorney years ago. So if you've got a county, I'm gonna use Jeff Davis as an example, that you don't have as much activity there as you do in Glenn County or Camden County, for instance. You could actually take funds, you could possibly reduce staff in those counties that you're not as busy in, and reallocate money, since it goes into one big pot, to Glenn County to help take care of this overage?
Theoretically, yes, Commissioner Tostenson, but here's the problem. Right now, I have 2 ADAs up there.
Could you do with one?
They're
I'm
529.
using-
I mean, I could do with one here. I mean, I don't mean to be sarcastic about it, but in terms of trying to provide as much of a service to each county in the circuit, I've got the same obligation to them no matter how much money they budget to me. I still have a constitutional and statutory duty to them and their citizens, no matter how much. And they haven't given us a budget increase. Jeff Davis hasn't given us a budget increase since I've been in office. But I still have to serve that county. That county is served by an office that's also in Appling County who does give me budget increases. And so between the two counties, that's where I have the caseload there at 529, split between 2 people. So that's 200, more than 250 cases apiece there. In terms of what's currently there. In Wayne County, I currently have 3 ADAs. Divide 3 into 813, and that comes up with 200 and some odd number of cases there too. Glenn, we've got, but to answer your question, yes, I have the discretion to allocate personnel as needed within the circuit to any particular county. But I do that trying to keep in mind that I'm trying to provide the highest level of service I can to each of these counties, no matter what they're funding.
I guess where I'm going with this is, what I'm saying is probably a temporary thing, until we neutralize this situation. And to get back to, your staffing as it was prior to, I'm just saying, can you cut a corner here, cut a corner there, use assistant DAs from Wayne County to work in Appling that would be working up the circuit versus coming, just always keeping somebody up there all the time that could go up there back and forth until we resolve this financial situation.
The problem I have with that, Commissioner Thompson, is the fact that we've got trial weeks going on in different counties the same weeks at the same time. And so if I've got trial weeks going on in Wayne at the same time I have them going on in Jeff Davis or Appling County, folks in Wayne County can't go up and help. And so
then maybe you could pull Glenn County to go up there.
We have the same problem. I'll be happy to sit down with you and show you the master calendar where we've got things. And besides, we're not just doing trials there. We've got here in Glenn County, out of any given month, about half of the work days or weekdays in any month, we're scheduled to be in court here with current personnel. We've got demands and requirements in the other counties too, not just Superior Court, but also juvenile court, magistrate court, and other duties that we have to do. So I try to allocate the resources, the personnel, if you will, around the circuit as best I can to try to get the job done as best I can in each circuit, and also keeping in mind trying to keep those individuals on staff. Because if I put 813 cases on one ADA, that ADA isn't going to stay long.
But you don't have that kind of volume up the circuit or in a smaller county.
No, because the demands they still have to do the same job and same level of job with regard to reviewing discovery, watching body cam video, evaluating that, talking with witnesses, arranging witnesses. The job is still the same in each case, regardless of which county it is. The requirements are still the same.
I'm gonna ask one more question.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna let the other commissioners have a chance. I know this was a verbal presentation today, and I want to thank you for that. It was very clear. I want to ask you if you could give us this presentation in writing, so that I know I'm going to get asked a lot of questions about this. I can already see my phone ringing off the hook, and I can see people calling wanting to know what's going on. And I want to be a little bit more clear when I try to explain it to constituents and things like that in the county, what we're doing, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to accomplish.
Sure.
So I want to be more factual. So I want to ask you if you would actually turn this verbal into a actual, put it in writing, put it in an email, so that I'll have something that I can actually physically look at and read and review, and it'll make it a little bit more informative for me. Maybe some of these other commissioners may want that as well, but I know that it was. Yeah, this well, and basically how this all came about, how you got to this point, and what you're trying to create a solution for. So I'd like to have that information in writing so I can understand it a lot clearer. I can read over it, read back over it, and but just be a little bit more informed about it. And this was a good presentation, but you know, you absorb so much percentage of a visual and a verbal, and I just need a little bit more. Can I get that from you?
Absolutely.
Or can the commission get that from you?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
And can I get, and you have a timeline that you could get that information to us? It'd be more like a brief, I guess you would say.
I'll try to get it to you sometime this month, the best I can.
That'll be
off my feet.
perfectly acceptable.
Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Higgins, I appreciate you being here today. Couple of things that jumped out at me, and we can go back to it. You said in October that it was a VS, 60% money went out at that point, and your staff knew about it at that time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but they didn't pass that along to you?
I was aware of the reduction in the VOCA or the grant funding for victim advocates.
Yeah.
It was represented to me at that point in time that we had sufficient funding not to have a reduction in force at that time.
Okay.
And that did not prove to be true.
Yeah, I got you. And you did state the operating budget, you've utilized it to pay down some of, or pay back Glenn County?
That's correct.
That is correct.
So each year, Commissioner Clark, if there are funds that, let's say that I'm budgeted for a certain year, for a certain amount for an ADA, well, that money is dispersed on a monthly basis. If it takes me a while to hire that ADA, that money is still being dispersed for that position to the DA and going into the operating budget, even though there's no need to spend it. That's the way this works. If there is a position that becomes vacant for a period of time during that fiscal year, that money for that position is still being dispersed, whether the county funding from whichever county, it's all going into a same pot. And so there is money that is in the operating budget from savings or cost savings, if you will, each fiscal year for various reasons, but that's an example of how that could occur.
I got you. Does the other counties know about this?
At this point, no.
And you said you left a accountant position vacant?
Yes, sir.
And why would you, because here's and I'm just a common guy, and this your office, your business. We're up here because of a accounting issue, not because of a legal issue. To me, that would be the position I would want filled and let go of an attorney or ADA. To me, that's the important part of why we're even here today, is the accounting. You said your staff dropped the ball on this, whatever, but it seems like the accounting part is where you would want to start. And like I said, it's your office, you run it as you see fit. But me, on this side of the desk, I'm just looking at it from that point. That should be the person you have in a seat, figuring out, working with Tamara to, let's make sure this doesn't happen again.
Well, Commissioner Clark, isn't the proposal to let the county take over that accounting process, so that need for that position? Is that how I'm understanding it, the need for that position?
That's the proposal going
Yeah.
forward, but I would let you know, Commissioner Clark, that the
Yeah.
reason that position is vacant is because that person is the one that failed to inform me about the failure to reimburse this county of the payroll accounts, and that's why that position is vacant.
I got you.
Now, that position can be, the duties of the person that was in that position can be performed by staff that already have. I've got a person on staff that's in a state paid position that I've moved into a state paid position that has done those type of activities previously with a previous employer. So I have somebody to actually perform those tasks already. But going forward, as Chairman Neal indicated, my proposal is to let's work out something, if the county is amenable to it, where some of these roles can be taken over, whether it be by Glenn Finance or HR, somehow that we work together with regard to that, so that a position is not even approved for money to be dispersed for unless there's sufficient funds to pay it.
Yeah. And this person you speak of, and I don't want their name, but how long had they been with the DA's office?
That person had been in the DA's office prior to me becoming DA. Now, I will tell you that prior to me becoming DA, no budget requests were ever, budget increases were ever requested. It was a flat amount. There were never any pay increases, never any pay increases or merit increases. That a certain portion of the employees at the end of a calendar year were paid a year-end bonus. Now, I'm not gonna operate that way for a lot of reasons, because I think it's illegal to do that with government employees, number one. And then number two, I'm gonna try to take care of my employees, and when they merit a pay increase, I'm gonna try to give it to them. So we started asking, part of our budget increases we started asking for was for merit increases, or the possibility of merit increases for our employees. So the employee that is vacant from that position was in that position prior to January of 2021, under the circumstances in the way that that office was being run at that time.
Thank you.
Commissioners?
I have a question. So the $2 million ARPA funding, in relating that to the slide that had amount over budget in FY '24, 883,000, can you get to that? So that one, so the $2 million was there and available when the amount over budget is 883?
I don't, Commissioner Sweat, I don't really understand what you're referring to as $2 million being available. ARPA funding is grant funding, American Rescue Plan Act funding that we
Okay.
receive through the Administrative Office of Courts for the state of Georgia.
Okay.
It has nothing, that funding cannot be used to resolve this situation.
How much, let me say it a different way then, in the operations of your office during the last fiscal period, how much of it had the source being ARPA?
I don't have those figures available to you. I think the overall allocation to the judicial circuit was somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2 million. You might be right with that figure.
Okay.
However, that amount coming to the district attorney's office was not the total amount of the allocation.
Okay.
And that funding is not funding that's available for this purpose. In fact, that funding is funding that was specifically used and authorized to hire this personnel that's in the office, 3 assistant DA positions and 2 legal assistants. And that's all that we're authorized to use that funding for, is those positions. That funding will expire at the end of this calendar year and will no longer be available.
Well, was that funding to be used to get through COVID cases? Where the backlog?
It was to address, it was done to address the backlog of COVID cases. Yes, Commissioner Rafalski, that's correct. It was also allocated through the Administrative Office of Courts to specifically emphasize prosecution of what's called serious violent felony cases. And so with regard to that funding, that's what it's been used for in terms of prosecuting cases, prosecuting more cases.
So are you caught up on COVID?
Well, in terms of COVID, we've been whittling away the COVID-related backlog, if you will. But I will tell you that there will always, with the current staffing levels that we have, being understaffed as we are, there's always going to be a backlog because criminal cases are coming in faster than they can be resolved. So there's a backlog just because of that. I inherited a backlog when I walked in the door. That was COVID backlog and other reasons. But with regard to the number of cases that come in each year, there's not a sufficient staff to resolve those for there not to be one.
Well, you know, as a business owner, and I can only use that experience, But in '08 and '09, when the economy went south, I kept employees that I should have let go. So it took me about 4 years to climb out of that hole that I created. So I learned a valuable lesson. If the economy backs up, you can't keep what you have. And, you know, the funding that was provided through the grants, that's part of the county funding there, Keith?
No, that was simply put up as as what our current sources of budget revenue are and what it's for. ARPA goes away at the end of this year.
Right.
So all those positions go away at the end of this year. One of those ARPA ADA positions is vacant. One of them, I'm able to move one of those attorneys into a state paid position and keep her. And then one of those positions I don't have funding for.
So the three investigators, are they used by all counties or just Glenn County?
Well, I have an investigator in each office. And I have a chief investigator and an investigator in Glenn County, and then I have an investigator in each office. Those are the positions that I have. Currently, I have an investigator position in Camden County that's vacant that I'm not gonna fill. So there's been, just by virtue of attrition, if you will, vacancies have taken place that I'm not filling. I'm not hiring people without the money to hire them.
Right.
So currently, there's a investigator position in Camden County, which is the second column to the right. That's vacant that I'm not filling. I've got an ADA position in Appling Jeff Davis County that I'm not going to be filling. There is the accountant position or payroll clerk, if you will, that was physically located in Camden County. I'm not filling. So through a combination of not filling vacant positions by reduction in force, I have had to let an employee go to make sure I was under budget for this next fiscal year, or within budget this next fiscal year. So I'm leaving positions vacant. I've moving 2 attorneys into state paid positions, and I've had a reduction in force as well. So I've taken action to make sure that I'm within budget this next fiscal year, and worked with Tamara Munson to make sure that we were gonna be, and she's been very, like I said, once again, very gracious to work with us to make sure that we will.
Well, one thing that stood out to me was in the number of cases, Camden's actually higher than Glenn. When you count the two together, it's 2,780. And Glenn was 24.
It is, but 992 of those are misdemeanors. So.
Well, you didn't break Glenn County out.
Because we have a state court here. Camden County is the only county in our judicial circuit that does not have a state court. So we have the responsibility for prosecuting all crimes, both felonies and misdemeanors, that are brought in Camden County.
Okay.
And so if somebody has a DUI and they're in the city court or in probate court and they ask for a jury trial, that gets transferred to Superior Court and we have to deal with it. So that's where the difference is, and that's why it was broken out, those different numbers. Even though the total number together combined is higher than Glenn County, 992, almost 1,000 of those are misdemeanors. And when you're looking at the study of the American Prosecutors Research Institute, they're giving some allowance for it taking less time to resolve or deal with a misdemeanor than it would be a felony. I don't know that their ratio that's their ratio that they came up with, and that's what I'm going by.
Okay.
So based upon that, even though their caseload is higher, their recommendation, based upon caseload, misdemeanors, and felonies, the recommendation to take care of that caseload in that county, just those cases that exist today, not counting any cases that come in tomorrow, would be at that level.
Let me get something clear in my head. So we've got $1,300,977 in the new budget, but you're asking for an additional $332,000.
I believe the number is I think that's about right,
362.
362?
Yeah, 362.
Yes, sir. And I'm
You know,
I'm
well-
asking the county for supplemental funding in that even though we went over payroll, there was a benefit realized from that, those services that were provided. And I'm attributing that as 41% of that payroll that we went over budget.
So you're actually asking for 1.6 or 7.
He already has. That's
I'm
it.
losing my slide here.
Well, I know the county had a lot of requests for additional staff, and we had to turn it down because the money wasn't there.
Right,
And that's my reason for that question.
sure.
Can I just say, wow? So what, my phone's gonna be ringing when I get home. What is the actual budget shortage for your last year?
It was, the last figure I had was $1,015,379 was the last figure I had. There was additional monies that needed to be paid back to the county for other reasons, but that was the last number I had.
1.3 million.
I couldn't tell you.
So, who was keeping the books for you?
The person,
No name.
Yeah.
well, I mean,
Sorry. My bad.
you got the,
Let me
you got the
reverse
position.
it. That person's not there, is that correct?
You got, well, it was a combination of the person that's not there any longer plus the office manager.
And you weren't aware of the slide that was
I was
happening?
not. My first indication there was something going on was an email I received. I was copied in from Glenn County Finance on February the 12th of 2024, I believe is the exact date, is the first inclination. I trusted staff with regard to the situation at hand at that point in time.
Well, you know, Tamara is a wonder-star superstar. There's so much she can give. I'm a little, I'm just saying that loud, I'm a little concerned about the additional duties. I mean, Glenn County's a big pot to keep a handle on and fast moving. I'm a little defensive of her having to, integrate into her system. I mean, you're basically an independent organization and you have your own systems within your office working and, gonna be some straightening out that be needed.
Well, Commissioner Clinton, I do believe, having talked to Ms. Munson, that her department, is capable of doing this and some, means might even streamline things some. But again, Ms. Munson, give you the opportunity to speak.
I have not looked at the amount of checks that are cut, the amount of, processing that there would be needed. And we haven't really gotten into that detail yet. However, we have a great financial system. And the way that it would operate is someone in his office would enter into that system invoices that need to be paid, and they would scan copies of those invoices. Someone in his office would have to approve those invoices for payment, saying, yes, this is a legitimate invoice and it is coded to the right account. And then it would come to us and we would check the budget to make sure that there's available budget to pay that invoice. And then we would process that disbursement or that check with our regular disbursements. So, if they issued an extra 10 or 15 or 20 checks a week, that's not gonna be a significant impact on our staff. We issue several hundred checks a week already. Now, bringing money in and receiving money, Most of that money would come through the mail. I would work with the other counties and the state to ask them to set up direct deposit so that that's less manual processing. But I think there are ways that we could streamline this to make it efficient and effective where it would not have. But there would still be requirements on his staff because we can't take ownership of what's being paid out. We can't take ownership that the payroll amounts are correct because we don't know. That would have to, the approvals would still have to come from his office. The requests for the funding would still have to come from his office. We would just be processing those items.
Well, I do know that you've had a shortage of people, and you've been, you, Judy, the others are working past 5 o'clock a lot of days. So I wouldn't want to put any more burden on you for that reason.
I appreciate that, sir.
Another thing that we talked about was making sure that if we do this, we want to have a clear MOU with the DA's office that kind of spells out exactly what we would be responsible for versus what their office would continue to have responsibility for. But a lot of it is now some of our newer systems, the efficiencies of there, a lot of it's electronic, so there's less people touching checks and mail. And I think if we could work with the other counties to get their deposits to be electronic, I think that would also streamline the process to make it a little bit more manageable for us.
I mean, my concern is
If I-
just the DA's office has been operating for years, it's internal system. And, you know, it's run off the track, you know, certainly we want to help do what's necessary for everything to be doing its job, whether it's sheriff or police department budgets or, you know, a new situation. A little shocked at this situation that has appeared. And, a little concerned about the remedies that, need to be taken, and obviously there's a negative flow going on right now. Funds, you know, I hate to see people get laid off, but, you know, I'm just a small peewee business, and, you know, I know what cash flow means and staying on top of the county. I just think we're gonna have some further discussions. I like you definitely to send me the, you know, your PowerPoint so I can start reading through it. You know, the other thing is you said to get an audit, and the people that were, you know, that you were relying on to handle this, you know, that's a pretty serious setback. We get audited every year by law, and, you know, we have an independent firm comes in and, you know, verifies the accounts, the books, the actions taken, and then as a part of that, which is helpful, you know, I think Malden and Jenkins, you know, whoever the firms are that we're using now, that come in and they tell you, okay, well, you got some open doors that are not good to have. You need to, you know, you need to redo your system or suggestions in county. And you said you have that? You have that contracting relationship?
We have an independent audit each year, yes. But I think that audit's just to check the bottom line balance and make sure it's check out. I think that's as far as that
The
goes.
CPA firm.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I'm concerned with Mr. Higgins brought up, when he was talking earlier, Tamara and Judy's workload now, and then we're gonna bring in 5 other counties to do budgets 3 different times a year.
We're not talking about doing their budgets for them.
No,
And we already do the payroll
Yeah,
for them. We're talking about the additional checks.
but again, money's coming in different times, budget's being set. I just think we, you know, putting too much on Tamara and Judy and their department. I agree with Commissioner Fendig. You know, it needs to be run within the DA's office, and accountability needs to be there. And, you know, I'm not really satisfied with these revenues. But when you've got, Mr. Higgins operates in 5 different counties, it's gonna happen. Those lines are gonna cross at some point. That's just
Well,
my
it's definitely
concern.
a crazy system, but I'm just saying if he was not made aware of the cash, you know, call it cash flow, shortage occurring, and individuals or systems were not reflecting that report, then you know, there's the public trust in what we do and in your office needs to be verified that, you know, exactly what's going on. I mean, I hate to say it, but you wanna make sure it's not misuse of funds. I don't know where, you know, like us with you don't have the flexibilities of fundraising like we do. I don't know what kind of thing we can offer today except,
Well,
I think some further internal investigation on audit needs to be done. I know those are expensive to verify that public trust hasn't been violated. I don't think it has, but that's a concern that we would need to prove. And then some remedy financially to keep you operating, you know, or operating the staff that you need.
Well, we're certainly not gonna take a vote today on this. This is a presentation, and we will take all this information that we gathered today under advisement and get back. But I think some remedies were offered. Some things might be considered, others might have to be tweaked, some things countered, but I really think that I think we've kept you up here under the fire for long enough for today. And I appreciate you coming in to make this presentation. I know it wasn't an easy thing to do. We obviously have questions, and I think it was a good start today on trying to answer those questions, but we'll continue to work. If you have a last statement, or I'd then let Mr. Fallon and Ms. Munson.
I just want to say I appreciate the opportunity to come before you. This is a proposed resolution. This isn't necessarily the only potential resolution of this. This is what I'm proposing to you. I'm open to audits. I'm open to opening our books. I'm opening to doing whatever we can to make sure that I never have to come in front of you again under these circumstances, like I said, because this is the last thing I ever want to do. That would be the last thing I ever wanted to do in the first place, much less again. So with that said, you know, I'm open to anything with regard to a resolution and whatever the board's wishes are in that regard. This is my proposal based upon the fact that Glenn County did derive some benefit from this overage in payroll. And therefore, in recognition of that, I'm asking for a supplemental budget that's proportionate to the percentage of the population in the circuit to recognize that. And we've made sure that we're going to be within budget this next fiscal year. And I'm just putting things on the table in terms of what we may be able to do going forward as possibilities to make sure this never happens again. And like I said, this is something that when Stephen Kelly was DA, that's how it was done with Phyllis McNichol as the finance, head of the finance department.
Is there any way, Keith, you can let us know what each of the other counties are gonna chip in on the amount?
I'll be happy to do that. Right now, we're we've submitted our budget request for the next fiscal year to Wayne County. I'm submitting a budget request with regard to, in the process of completing a budget request for Appling County. We've asked for an increase in budget for Wayne County. We're going to be asking for an increase in budget with regard to Appling County. And with regard to that, once I know what those budget requests are and what their response is to that, that'll let me know what additional funds, if any, I'm going to have coming in with regard to that, and will help me then evaluate what else I may need to ask from the other counties.
Thank you. And Mayor, do you have any remarks that you would like?
Yeah, I guess my last statement to this is because this is a FY24 issue, we cannot wait until, you know, December or January, whenever the Wayne County budget is approved. We will need to come to some kind of resolution. I'll have to book either a receivable from the DA's office, write off debt, do a supplemental budget appropriation, I'll have to have some type of resolution for our books, by the end of August. Our audit starts at the beginning of September.
So we'll look at this again as a commission as we move forward. And then, Mr. Fallon, is there anything you want to add to that? Anything else to come before us today?
Thank you for providing the written information.
Thank you, I'll be happy to do that. Thank you for your
so
time.
much. Yes, sir. Have a motion to adjourn by Commissioner Rafalski.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Toscasson. All in favor, please raise your right hand. We stand adjourned. Thank you.